I wasn't supposed to be in that meeting. But when I walked in, every pair of eyes told me I shouldn't have been there. The air felt heavy. That kind of heavy where you know something's already been decided, and you're just there to make it official. My manager, Craig, stopped mid-sentence when he saw me. Then he smiled that fake managerial smile that always hides a knife behind it. "Good, you're here," he said. "We were just reviewing the quarterly results." I didn't sit down. I just nodded and stood near the door. I could see the PowerPoint slide behind him, the one with the words Project Athena. Status: failed. My name was underneath in small gray text. Funny thing is, I hadn't even been leading Athena for the last 3 months. They pulled me off it to assist with new onboarding strategies, which was corporate code for, "We're replacing you, but we don't have the guts to say it yet." Craig clicked to the next slide. My teammates, or what used to be my teammates, sat there pretending to take notes. No one looked at me, not even Mia, who'd been my right hand since the first prototype. My chest burned, but I kept quiet. "So," Craig said, tapping his pen, "given the cost overruns and timeline issues, we'll be reorganizing the department. Some roles will change." He glanced at me. "Some will be sunset." He actually said it like that. Sunset. Like my job was a bad marketing campaign. When the meeting ended, I walked out before anyone could give me their pity faces. The hallway smelled like burnt coffee and carpet glue. I didn't stop walking until I hit the stairwell. That's when the adrenaline wore off and the silence caught up. I'd given this company 6 years. No drama, no excuses. Overtime without clocking it. Fixed code at 2 in the morning just because it was mine. And now, just like that, I was being erased from the board. Craig's assistant sent me the official email 2 hours later. "Your position has been transitioned. HR will reach out regarding severance." Transitioned. As if I were an app feature they'd quietly removed. I didn't tell anyone. Not even my brother, who'd been the first to say I was too loyal for corporate work. I just drove home in silence, hands gripping the wheel like the steering column was the only thing keeping me grounded. When I got home, I opened my laptop out of habit. Emails, Slack, ticket queues. My name was already gone from the workspace, like I'd never existed. The funny part? The project they said I failed was still running. Same bugs, same deadlines. The only thing that changed was that my name wasn't on it anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with a single light on, staring at the NDA they'd made me sign 6 years ago. It wasn't the standard one. I remembered that, even back then. It was thicker, with extra clauses about data ownership and developmental IP rights. At the time, I didn't care. I just wanted to build things. I'd been a nobody, a self-taught coder from Ohio with a busted Dell and too many ideas. They gave me a shot. I thought that meant something. Around midnight, I pulled up my external drive. I hadn't opened the archive folder in months. It was where I kept all the early versions, the original Athena builds, the ones I'd written before management helped streamline the process. I opened one file, then another. Line by line, I saw my old comments, my code signatures, my timestamps, my fingerprints all over the system they'd just called a failure. And then it hit me. A single terrifying thought that made my pulse slam against my throat. If the original Athena framework was mine, and the IP clause in my contract wasn't properly executed, then they didn't own it. I did. I went to bed with that thought echoing in my head like a quiet thunder. I didn't know if I was angry or excited or just done. Maybe all three. The next morning, HR called. "Hey, Jason," a woman's voice chirped, too cheerful for what was coming. "We're just confirming your exit interview for tomorrow. Legal will be present as well. Standard procedure." Legal. That word stuck like a hook in my mind. By the time I hung up, my heart had stopped racing. I wasn't scared anymore. I was curious. Because if their lawyer was going to be there, then maybe it was time I brought my own. But that was just the beginning. The HR office smelled like citrus wipes and pretense. Everything about that place was designed to make you forget you were being stripped of something. The soft chairs, the pastel motivational posters, even the little water bottles arranged in a perfect row. I sat there 15 minutes early. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see who'd walk in. First was Denise from HR, smiling like she was about to break bad news to a child. Then came Craig, pretending he hadn't avoided eye contact all week. And finally, the lawyer. He was tall, silver hair, navy suit that probably cost more than my old car. His name was Milton. He didn't shake my hand, just nodded, sat down, opened his leather folder, and said, "Let's make this simple." Denise cleared her throat. "Jason, we just need to go over your transition paperwork. There's a confidentiality clause you'll need to re-sign, given your access level." I nodded slowly. "Access level?" Craig cut in. "You had admin rights to the Athena system. That's proprietary tech. Standard procedure." I leaned back. "Funny. Proprietary implies ownership." Craig blinked. "Of course it does." Milton's pen stopped moving. He looked up at me. First sign of life from him all morning. "Is there an issue, Mr. Hale?" I pulled a flash drive from my pocket, set it on the table, and said, "Depends who owns this." Craig shifted. Denise stopped smiling. Milton didn't move, but his jaw tightened. "That's company property," Craig said quickly. "Actually, it's a backup of my original builds," I replied, "from before Athena became a company project. Time-stamped, dated, signed in my name, 6 months before your first funding round." Milton's pen hit the folder with a soft click. "Mr. Hale, if you're suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything," I said, calm but steady. "I'm stating a fact. I wrote the base framework that your system still uses. I never signed an assignment of rights document for the pre-employment version, which means—" He raised a hand. "Let's pause there." Denise tried to speak, but Craig waved her quiet. Milton's eyes never left mine. "Mr. Hale," he said finally, tone slow, deliberate, "do you understand the seriousness of what you're implying?" "I do." "Do you?" He glanced at Craig. "We'll need to verify that claim." Craig was pale now. "Jason, come on. You're not seriously—" "I'm seriously done being called a failure for building something you didn't understand," I said. "You wanted to sunset my role? Fine. But you don't get to keep my son." For a second, nobody spoke. Then Milton stood. "We'll be in touch." He took the flash drive and left without another word. Craig tried to sound in control. "Jason, you realize this is—" "Overdue," I said, and walked out. That night, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. Milton and Crane, LLP. Subject line, "Regarding your intellectual property claim." I opened it. "Mr. Hale, per our preliminary review, your assertion regarding the ownership of the Athena source architecture has raised material questions about the company's intellectual property registration. We request a meeting to discuss this further. Please confirm availability." My hands actually shook. Not with fear, with something sharper. Vindication, maybe. I didn't reply right away. I sat there for a long minute, looking around my small apartment. The same one I'd rented when the company first started paying me barely enough to survive. The same couch I'd fallen asleep on after fixing bugs no one thanked me for. Now they wanted to talk. I sent back a short reply. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. works." The next morning I walked into their downtown office. It was one of those glass and steel places where silence feels expensive. A receptionist led me to a conference room that looked like it had never seen a sandwich or a laugh. Milton was already there, this time without Craig. He motioned for me to sit. "Mr. Hale, I'll be brief. We've reviewed your files." "They're substantial." I said nothing. He went on, "The metadata checks out. The early versions of the code do, in fact, predate your employment contract. That complicates matters." "I'm aware," he nodded. "The company would prefer to resolve this quietly." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean you'd prefer I don't remind your investors that your flagship software might be owned by someone you just fired?" He didn't flinch. "That's one way to put it." Then he slid a folder toward me. Inside was a single page. Non-disclosure and transfer agreement. Payment amount, $120,000. I almost laughed. You think I'll sell 6 years of my life for that? Milton sighed. It's a starting offer. I advise you to take it seriously. I advise you, I said, standing, to tell Craig he should have kept my name on the project. It would have been cheaper. His eyes followed me as I reached the door. Mr. Hale, he said, tone softer now, you might want to check your corporate registration records before making any decisions. I frowned. What do you mean? He gave me a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. Let's just say the company's paperwork has some interesting footnotes. That was it. No explanation, no smirk, just that. And I didn't know it yet, but that sentence, that single quiet hint, would change everything. Because I wasn't just the guy they fired. I was the name on the company's founding documents, and that was about to cost them everything. I didn't sleep that night. I went digging. Company records aren't hard to find if you know where to look, especially when you helped set them up in the first place. Back when the company was still 5 people in a co-working space, Craig had asked me to file the incorporation paperwork online. I was the only one who actually understood how to navigate the Secretary of State's system. Just fill in the fields, he'd said, half distracted, sipping burnt coffee. We'll handle the signatures later. But he never did. He never replaced my name on the filing, which meant legally the LLC that had grown into his precious empire still had me listed as its managing member, the de facto owner. When I pulled up the record, I just stared at the screen. My name, my home address, registered agent Jason Hale. 6 years old, never amended, not once. For a full minute, I didn't even move. My mind was blank. No joy, no anger, just silence. The kind that comes right before a storm. I spent the next hour collecting proof. Screenshots, document IDs. The time-stamped incorporation PDF I'd emailed Craig that same night, back in 2018. Everything was still in my sent folder. It was like the universe had been quietly holding my receipts while I forgot to ask for them. By morning, I had a folder labeled Athena Ownership. I zipped it, encrypted it, and sent a single email to Milton. Subject, you were right. He called me 30 minutes later. Mr. Hale, he said, voice sharper now, I assume you've verified the record? I have. Then I'll make this easy for both of us. Don't contact Craig directly. We'll schedule a meeting with the board. Board? I asked. Yes, he said. Technically, that means you're bored. The meeting was set for Friday. I walked in wearing the same suit I wore at my first interview there. Slightly tight, a little outdated, but clean. Craig was already seated at the long mahogany table, flanked by 2 executives I'd never liked and 1 HR rep pretending to take notes. Milton stood near the end, his expression unreadable. Craig didn't waste time. Jason, what exactly do you think you're doing? I looked at him calm. Reclaiming what's mine. He laughed, but it was hollow. You think this is about a form you filled out 6 years ago? No, I said. It's about the form you never corrected. Milton raised a hand. Let's keep this civil. Mr. Hale, as it stands, you are indeed listed as managing member of the parent LLC. That gives you legal control over certain operations until the record is amended. Craig turned red. This is absurd. He's a former employee. Milton shrugged. He's a former employee who owns the company that employs you. You could hear the silence hit the room, a thick, pulsing kind of silence that makes even the air sound afraid. Craig leaned forward. Jason, be reasonable. You don't want this fight. I already had it, I said. You just didn't notice. I opened my folder and slid a stack of papers across the table. I'm not suing you. I'm not blackmailing you. I'm filing for transfer of control and an internal audit. I want transparency, financials, payroll, contractor agreements, and I want it by Monday. One of the execs, Miles, the CFO, scoffed. You can't just walk in here and... I can, I cut in, and I did. Milton spoke again, careful, deliberate. He's not bluffing, gentlemen. The state records are clear. Until this is resolved, Mr. Hale technically has authority over major financial decisions, including payroll. Craig's jaw clenched. You're going to regret this. I smiled, but not the friendly kind. I already regretted staying quiet. This is just the correction. By that afternoon, half the office knew something had gone down. People avoided eye contact. Whispers trailed behind me when I walked through the halls. Mia, my old teammate, caught me by the elevator. Jason, she said, voice shaking. What's happening? Accountability, I said simply. Something we used to talk about in stand-ups but never practiced. Her eyes softened. They said you were done. I am, I said, just not the way they meant. Monday morning, the audit hit. Turns out the failed Athena project hadn't failed at all. Craig had redirected funds from the R&D budget into a consulting shell company that didn't exist, except on paper under his wife's name. $500,000 vanished. The same project they blamed me for collapsing had actually kept the company afloat, while he siphoned money out the back door. Milton's firm found it in 48 hours. When he called me, his tone had changed completely. Mr. Hale, the board has requested an emergency session. They'd like you to attend, as acting executive member. Acting? I asked. He hesitated. Craig has been suspended, pending investigation. I looked out my window, the sun rising over the city skyline, and let that sink in. 6 years of being told I wasn't enough. 6 years of being quietly erased. And all it took to flip the script was one forgotten signature. At the next board meeting, I didn't raise my voice, didn't gloat. I just spoke quietly, clearly. I'm not here to burn the place down, I said. I built something good here once. I just want to see it run the way it was meant to, with integrity. They nodded, some out of guilt, some out of fear. Didn't matter. The tide had turned. As I left the building, Craig was standing in the lobby, security badge clipped to a temporary visitor pass. His eyes found mine. For a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. He stepped forward. You think you won? I paused by the door. No, I said. I think I stopped losing. And then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. That night, I stopped being the hero. I became the consequence. The strangest part wasn't the victory. It was the quiet. After years of noise, deadlines, meetings, fake smiles, whispered backstabs, the silence was unnerving. I'd expected triumph to feel loud. It didn't. It felt clean. Craig's suspension turned permanent within 2 weeks. The audit bled into a full-scale investigation, and the board had no choice but to announce a leadership restructuring. Fancy words for we got caught. They offered me the CEO position formally. Same conference room, same table, different power dynamic. I almost said no. I wasn't built for titles. I was built for work. But Milton's voice echoed in my head. You either take the seat or someone else will, and they won't protect what you built. So I took it. Not for revenge, for correction. The first thing I did was dissolve the fake consulting firms. Then I restructured the teams, promoted Mia, cut the dead weight. The company changed shape fast, like metal cooling into something stronger after the fire. People stopped whispering when I walked by. They started nodding. That was new. Respect feels different when it's earned twice. About a month later, I got a letter from Craig, handwritten, 3 pages. The first 2 were excuses, market conditions, stress, miscommunication. The last paragraph was what mattered. You were never supposed to be in that meeting, Jason. That's on me. But you were also never supposed to be the one to survive it. I read it twice, folded it once, threw it in the shredder. Some apologies are just another form of self-preservation. Milton stopped by my office a week later. You're settling in well, he said. I looked around, same walls, same furniture, but everything felt lighter. I'm not settling. I'm rebuilding, he nodded. Just don't make their mistake. Which one? Thinking silence means weakness. I smiled. Don't worry. I learned silence can also mean strategy. He gave a faint smirk and left. Arimas. 3 months after taking over, we released Athena 3.0, the version I'd always wanted to build. No shortcuts, no politics. Just clean code and cleaner conscience. The launch went viral. Investors called it a miraculous turnaround. They didn't know the truth. It wasn't a miracle. It was accountability, finally paying its debts. Revenue doubled. Employee turnover dropped. We even made the news. The comeback company. I didn't give interviews. Didn't need to. One night, after everyone left, I stayed in the office alone. The city lights reflected on the glass walls, cold and gold at once. I opened my laptop and scrolled to the oldest file on the server. Athena, so want, in it. The first line of code still had my name. I'd written it in a motel room 6 years ago with takeout on the nightstand, and hope I could barely afford. That's when it hit me. Not pride, not satisfaction, just peace. Because every insult, every dismissal, every late night that no one noticed had brought me to this exact stillness. I shut the laptop, looked out at the skyline. Craig had tried to erase me. The company had buried me under false reports and silence. And yet, there I was, sitting in the chair they'd built to keep me out. Not angry, not vengeful, just done. A few days later, Denise from HR came by to drop off some old paperwork. "Feels weird, doesn't it?" she said, "sitting where you used to sit." I shook my head. "No, it feels right." She hesitated, then asked, "What are you going to do next?" I smiled, slow and quiet. "The same thing I always did. Work." She laughed softly. "Some things never change." I looked at her. "Everything changes, Denise. That's the point." That night, I locked the office and walked out without looking back. No cinematic music, no applause, no grand closing line. Just the sound of my shoes on marble, echoing in a place that finally sounded honest. Outside, the wind was cold, clean, a new start. They said I failed. They wrote me off, buried me, laughed about it. But in the end, when their lawyer looked me in the eye and said, "You're the CEO?" I just smiled, because I didn't need to say a word. The silence said everything.